AITA if I move out of our apartment knowing my fiancé and his mom can't afford it without me? I 29 female have been with my fiancé 27 male for a few years now, and we have been living together for about a year and a half. We met when he was in his MBA program, and after he graduated, we decided to move in together in the city where I had already been living for several years. I work in a STEM field, have a solid career with a good company, and make a decent salary, more than him, actually, mainly because I've been working longer and I'm in tech. I genuinely love my job and feel like I've built a stable, comfortable life for myself. When we moved in together, we opted for a 2-bedroom apartment. It made sense, my job went permanently remote after COVID, and I needed a dedicated office space. Since the second bedroom was primarily for my work, I agreed to pay 2/3 of the rent while he covered the remaining third, and we split everything else 50/50. It felt fair at the time, and everything was going well. Then, this past May, his mom dropped a bombshell. She wanted to move to our city to be closer to him. Now, for some context, she has always wanted him to move back to the Midwest, where they're from. She took it hard when he decided to stay here, and I know she had been hoping he would eventually change his mind. But instead, she decided she would just move here. She said she would stay with us, for a little while, until she found a job and got settled. She's a teacher, so she assumed she'd find work pretty quickly. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. I thought, okay, a couple of months over the summer, annoying, but manageable. I even rearranged my life to accommodate her, moving my entire office setup into a cramped corner of our bedroom so she could have the second bedroom to herself. My fiancé even bought a bed for her so she could be comfortable. That was 6 months ago. She never even applied for a single teaching job. Not one. She has been living with us, rent-free, ever since. At first, I tried to be patient. I tried to be understanding. But as time passed, things started to wear on me. She doesn't respect that I work full-time from home. She constantly interrupts me during work hours, even when I'm in the middle of Teams meetings. And when I say constantly, I mean multiple times a day, every single day. She'll just barge in and start talking to me, completely ignoring the fact that I have headphones on or that I'm literally in a meeting. And if I tell her I'm working, she gets offended. I've tried to set boundaries, but she just doesn't care. On top of that, she expects me to chauffeur her around everywhere because she doesn't like driving in the city. She doesn't even try to figure things out on her own. If she needs to go anywhere, grocery store, doctor's appointment, literally anywhere, she just assumes I'll take her. And when I tell her I can't, she sulks like a child. But the worst part? The comments. The constant, never-ending criticism. She has these outdated, traditional views on gender roles, and she is absolutely horrified by the way my fiancé and I split household responsibilities. She has made it abundantly clear that she thinks I should be doing everything around the house. The cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, everything. She actually scolded me once because my fiancé did his own laundry, saying it was embarrassing that I let my man do chores. Meanwhile, she does absolutely nothing to help. She doesn't clean up after herself, doesn't contribute financially, doesn't cook. She just exists in our apartment, taking up space and making me feel like a guest in my own home. I tried talking to my fiancé about it. Repeatedly. Every time I brought up how frustrated I was, he would just sigh and say, I know, I agree with you, but what am I supposed to do? I can't just kick my mom out. And he refused to talk to her about the way she was treating me. He wouldn't set boundaries, wouldn't ask her to contribute financially, wouldn't even acknowledge how much this situation was affecting me. By September, I had completely lost my patience. I told him that since it was clear his mom wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, we needed to start splitting rent 3 ways. It wasn't fair that I was paying extra for a second bedroom I couldn't even use. His response? She can't afford that. She needs to save money until she gets a job. A job she was never even looking for. I refused to let it go. Eventually, he compromised and said we could at least do a 50-50th split, meaning I wouldn't be paying extra anymore. It wasn't ideal, but at least it was something. The problem is, even with that arrangement, I was still financially supporting a woman who was making my life miserable. And it's not just about the money. I hate feeling like a stranger in my own home. I hate having my work setup crammed into a tiny corner of our bedroom while the second bedroom sits unused for most of the day. I hate that I can't relax in my own apartment without feeling scrutinized and judged. I hate that my fiancé refuses to stand up for me. I hate all of it. I kept asking him what the long-term plan was, and every time, I got the same answer: I don't know. Well, I know. I can't do this anymore. One of my close friends is losing her roommate at the end of February, and she asked if I wanted to move in with her. Our lease isn't up until June, so if I move out, my fiancé and his mom would have to figure out how to pay for the entire apartment on their own. I know they can't afford it. But at this point, I don't care. I cannot live like this for another 4 months. Financially, I can afford to pay my portion of our current lease and also cover half the rent at my friend's place. It wouldn't be ideal, but it's doable. And honestly, I don't even think I'd mind. The idea of having my own space again, of not having to walk on eggshells in my own home, of not feeling like an outsider in my own life, it's more than worth it. But I know what's going to happen if I do this. My fiancé is going to be furious. His mom is going to paint me as the villain. And realistically, this probably means the end of our relationship. Still, I feel like I have no choice. I've been patient. I've been accommodating. I've tried everything to make this work, and I've been met with nothing but resistance. Would I be the asshole for moving out and leaving them to deal with the consequences? Or am I justified in finally putting myself first? Update 1. I started off trying to reply to everyone's comments and keep up, but honestly, I just got completely overwhelmed. The response was way more than I expected, and at some point, I realized I couldn't possibly get to everyone. But I read every single comment, every DM, and every bit of advice people gave me. First, I just want to say thank you. Even to the people who were harsh. Actually, especially to the people who were harsh. Because I needed that. I needed someone to shake me out of this fog I'd been living in and make me realize just how much I was letting myself be taken advantage of. The more comments I read, the angrier I got. Not just at my fiancé, well, now soon to be ex, not just at his mom, but mostly at myself. How did I let this happen? How did I let them treat me like this for so long? I've always thought of myself as a strong, independent person, but looking at this situation from the outside, I saw how much I had been minimizing my own needs just to keep the peace. It was infuriating. I was infuriating. I kept thinking back to every time I bit my tongue, every time I let something slide, every time I told myself it wasn't a big deal when it clearly was. I should have put my foot down months ago. I should have never let it get to this point. I couldn't let it go on any longer. This past weekend, I finally got my ex alone so we could talk, which was harder than it should have been because his mom always tries to tag along whenever we go anywhere. But I made sure we were alone this time. No distractions, no interruptions, just him and me. Reading all the responses and messages people sent me really helped me figure out how to approach this. There were so many points I hadn't even considered, and so many things I should have been asking myself long before now. I wanted to give him one last chance. Not because I thought he would take it, but because I wanted to be able to walk away knowing that I had given him the opportunity to choose me. I laid it all out, again. I told him how unhappy I was, how miserable his mom was making me, how it was affecting my work because of her constant interruptions and how frustrating it was to be forced to work out of a corner in our bedroom when I had been paying for that second bedroom. And then I reminded him, again, that until a few months ago I was covering the majority of the rent. That the only reason we were even able to afford this apartment in the first place was because of my salary, and that I was basically funding his mom's lifestyle while she sat around and did nothing. And of course, he said the same thing he always does. He agreed. He said he knew it wasn't right, that he knew she shouldn't be treating me that way, and that he knew it was uncomfortable for all of us. That last part made my blood boil. I don't care if she's uncomfortable. Why should I? She is the one who moved in and took over my home. She is the one who disrupted my life. I am the only one who has been making sacrifices here. And this time, I didn't just let it go. I told him straight up how angry and disappointed I was. I told him it was absolutely disgusting that he let me pay 2/3 of the rent for months while she had her own bedroom and I was shoved into a corner. That it was unfair that I was still paying half when there were 3 of us living there. And, of course, his response was the same. She doesn't have any income. She needs to conserve money. That set off another light bulb in my head. If she doesn't have income, then how is she paying for anything? Where did all her things go when she moved in? What money does she use for her personal expenses? And that's when I found out that when she got divorced, my ex's dad bought her out of the house. She got a lump sum of money from the divorce settlement. How much? He had no idea. How much of it was left? No clue. But she had been working full-time as a teacher and living in a small apartment before moving in with us, so realistically, she shouldn't have needed to burn through all of it. She had money. She just didn't want to spend it. She wanted to live off of me instead. That was it for me. I told him I was moving out before the end of the month. And from now on, I was only paying 25% of the rent. Some of the comments had pointed out that since she had an entire bedroom to herself and I was stuck sharing with a man-child, she should be paying twice as much. That logic made perfect sense to me. And after I move out, I told him I wouldn't be paying for anything else, no utilities, no groceries, no extras. Just my portion of the rent, and nothing more. I know his finances. If he has to cover 75% of the rent on his own, it's going to eat up a massive chunk of his income. And after paying for utilities and food, there won't be much left over. Rent was due on the 1st, but it's not considered late until the 5th, so he had 2 days to figure out how he was going to come up with the money. If he didn't, and I ended up covering for him, I was going to deduct it from future payments. The only reason I was even willing to keep paying part of the rent was because I was legally stuck. I talked to the leasing office, and they made it clear that since we signed one joint lease, we were both responsible for the full amount. They didn't care who paid it, as long as it got paid. The only way to get out of it would be if he signed a new lease on his own or with his mom, but he wouldn't pass the credit check on his own, so I was pretty much stuck with this arrangement until the lease ended. That said, if he decided to be stupid and not pay his share, I had an ace up my sleeve. I would tell the leasing office that his mom had moved in. Our lease explicitly forbids long-term guests without approval, and she had been there for over 6 months. Getting evicted would actually solve a lot of my problems, so if it came to that, I wasn't going to hesitate. I also told him that until I moved out, I wasn't going to be working from the apartment anymore. One of my friends, yes, the one I'm moving in with, said I could work from her place during the day since she and her current roommate both work in-office jobs. I took her up on it. I also started looking into other options so I wouldn't be imposing too much, public libraries, coffee shops, even considering a co-working space if needed. Just in case, I gathered up all of my important documents, valuables, and anything I wouldn't want his mom getting her hands on and gave them to my friend for safekeeping. He didn't take any of it well. The most surprising part was that he was actually shocked. He was genuinely stunned that I wasn't prioritizing his mom. He truly believed that I wanted to take care of her. He kept saying things like, "But what about my mom? What am I going to tell her? We need to help her." We. There was no we. It had only ever been me. He asked about our relationship and the engagement. I told him after I moved out, I needed space. If, in a few months, we both agreed, we could talk about the relationship. But he would have to prove that he was going to stand up for me, that he would set boundaries with his mom. In reality, I knew there was no future for us. But I wasn't about to invite more drama right now. I told him he needed to be the one to tell his mom what was happening. She wasn't my problem. I wasn't going to deal with her reaction. He still hadn't told her yet, but I was starting to move my things, so he didn't have much time. And honestly, I was looking forward to her reaction. Let her throw a fit. Let her be furious. I don't care anymore. I'm done. Update 2. Well, he finally told her. I wasn't there when it happened, but I didn't need to be. From what I gathered, it didn't go well. My friend texted me that evening with a simple message: "You should probably avoid going home for a bit." That was all I needed to know. Apparently, my ex had called her in full-blown panic mode after his mom's inevitable meltdown. From what I later pieced together, he sat her down and broke the news, told her that I was moving out, that things between us weren't working, and that this was happening whether she liked it or not. Her reaction? Pure, unfiltered, dramatic outrage. The kind of performance that belonged in a badly written soap opera. She gasped, clutched her chest like she had just been personally betrayed by the universe, and immediately launched into a tirade about how she knew this was coming. How she knew I wasn't the right girl for him. How she had warned him that I would abandon him. After everything he had done for me. That was the part that almost made me laugh. Everything he had done for me. The irony was almost painful. She went on, painting me as some kind of heartless villain who had used him, tricked him, and manipulated him into paying more than his fair share. The complete opposite of reality, considering I had been the financial backbone of that entire apartment since the moment she moved in. But in her mind, none of that mattered. The facts didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. All that mattered was her carefully constructed narrative where she was the victim, and I was the selfish, ungrateful woman who had abandoned her poor, helpless son. But the best part? The absolute best part? She told him that this had been my plan all along. That I had orchestrated this entire situation, waited until she was at her most vulnerable, and then kicked her out by proxy. Like I had some kind of master plan to lure her into my home just so I could throw her out. As if I hadn't been the one sacrificing my peace, my comfort, my money, and my sanity for the past 6 months. If that had been my plan, I must have been absolutely terrible at executing it, because she was still sitting pretty in that apartment while I was the one moving out. And then came the real kicker. The moment where everything shifted. The second she realized that her tantrum wasn't working, she pivoted. Flipped the script. Became the victim. "Where will I go?" she sobbed. "You know I don't have anywhere else." That was it. That was the moment where everything clicked into place for him. Because this wasn't about me. This wasn't about the relationship. This wasn't about anything except her. She had never planned to leave. She hadn't even considered leaving. And for the first time, I think my ex actually saw it. I mean, really saw it. Not just the surface-level frustration of having her there, not just the inconvenience of her being around all the time, but the full, undeniable truth. She had never intended to move out. She had never intended to get a job. She had never intended to be independent. This wasn't a temporary situation for her. This was her plan. And suddenly, he was trapped. According to my friend, when he called her after the whole thing, he sounded completely lost. Like he didn't know which way was up anymore. Like the floor had just been ripped out from under him, and for the first time in his life, he was seeing his mother for who she truly was. I could imagine the aftermath perfectly. The tears. The guilt-tripping. The emotional manipulation. The "how could you do this to me?" And the "after all I've done for you." And the "I'm your mother." And the "I gave up everything for you." And yet, when I checked my phone later that night, all he had texted me was, "I don't know what to do." I left him on read. Because I knew exactly what was happening. He was looking for me to fix it. He was looking for reassurance, for some kind of emotional support, for me to give him an easy way out of the mess that he had allowed to happen. He wanted me to step in, to tell him it was all going to be okay, to soften the blow of his mother's meltdown. He wanted me to take responsibility for the consequences of his inaction. And I wasn't going to do it. The next morning, I packed up more of my things. I was careful about it, not rushing, not making a big show of it, just methodically going through my belongings and separating what was mine from what was his. My friend had already agreed to let me store some stuff at her place, so little by little, I started moving my things out. Every box, every bag, every piece of furniture that belonged to me, it was all leaving. I wasn't waiting around for the next explosion. I wasn't giving them time to emotionally manipulate me into staying. I was done. By the time my ex finally came home that evening, I was already out the door, heading to my friend's place to drop off another load. He looked exhausted. Defeated. Like he had spent the entire day walking through a storm and still had no idea how to get out of it. I didn't ask him how his day went. I didn't ask what his mom had said after I left. I didn't ask what kind of guilt trip she had put him through. It didn't matter anymore. Because I had already made my decision. I was leaving. And I did not care how that affected them. Update 4. I knew his mom was going to confront me at some point. She was never the type to sit quietly and accept things, especially when she believed she had been wronged. She had spent months making herself the center of everything, twisting reality to fit whatever narrative kept her comfortable. There was no way she was going to let me leave without getting in her final word, without trying to make me feel guilty, without making one last desperate attempt to hold on to the control she thought she had. What I wasn't expecting was for her to ambush me while I was packing up the last of my things. I had gone back to the apartment to grab the last few boxes, just the remaining odds and ends that hadn't made it out in the first few trips. The place already felt different. My stuff was mostly gone, leaving behind an emptiness that made it obvious how much I had contributed to making that apartment a home. Without my furniture, my decor, my personal touches, it looked cold. Generic. Like a space that had been hastily thrown together instead of lived in. I had just finished sealing a box when I heard her footsteps behind me. She was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, expression icy. For a moment, she just stared, like she was waiting for me to acknowledge her first. When I didn't, she took that as her cue to start talking. She said I was heartless for leaving her son in this situation. That I was tearing apart a family because I couldn't handle a little inconvenience. She said she always knew I was selfish, that it was only a matter of time before I showed my true colors. She said I had pretended to love him, that I was betraying him, that a real partner would stand by him no matter what. She didn't mention the fact that she had been living rent-free for 6 months. She didn't mention the fact that I had sacrificed my own space, my own comfort, my own peace of mind to accommodate her. She didn't mention the fact that I had been the one keeping everything afloat financially. None of that mattered. The only thing that mattered to her was the fact that, for the first time since she had moved in, she wasn't getting her way. And then she went for the kill. She took a step closer, dropped her voice like she was about to say something profound, and narrowed her eyes. She told me I was never good enough for him anyway. That he deserved someone better. That I should have known my place from the beginning. And that was the moment something inside me just shifted. For months, I had been walking on eggshells, trying to be reasonable, trying to accommodate, trying to keep the peace. I had let her invade my space, dictate my home life, make my relationship unbearable, and I had done everything I could to be understanding. I had tried to make it work. I had tried to be the bigger person. I had tried. And suddenly, I was just done. I laughed. Not in a dramatic, over-the-top way. Not in a villain getting the upper hand way. Just an exhausted, are you serious right now? Kind of laugh. Because it was ridiculous. All of it. The way she twisted reality, the way she acted like she was the victim, the way she had convinced herself that I was the problem when she was the one who had never contributed a damn thing. I picked up my last box. If I wasn't good enough for him, then it looked like everything had worked out for the best. I didn't wait for her reaction. I didn't care what she had to say next. I turned, walked out the door, and didn't look back. I called my friend as soon as I got to my car, told her I was on my way over. She didn't even ask how it had gone. She already knew. That was it. My ex texted me once after that. Just a simple, I miss you. I never responded. The lease ends in June. I don't know what they're going to do, and honestly, I don't care. If they figure out a way to cover the rent, good for them. If they end up having to move out, that's their problem. I've spent enough time worrying about how to accommodate them. That chapter is closed. Now, I have my own space. My own life. My own peace. And for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe.